All right, so just in case you didn't know, keep in mind that all of this that I've discussed so far happened about 4 months ago. And then things were okay. But then what happened is that during the last month, there was a coordinated sort of media attack by a lot of Jewish people against her. And so there was this one rabbi, Rabbi Barkley, who decided to write a hit piece on her saying that she supports Hitler, blah, blah, blah. I mean, based on that earlier stuff that I already showed you. And so she was like, you know what, instead of getting angry at him, I'm going to bring him on my show and let him discuss with me. And I was actually pretty shocked by this response. And I will say, to his credit, he came onto her show. But he came onto her show to demand that she apologizes, and he got extremely emotional over literally everything. And so here's just one part of the conversation, which I think summarizes quite well how almost the entire 1 hour 45-minute discussion went. And by the way, yes, I did watch the entire interview, but I think this is a good summary of that.
Just so the reference, the backstory is that this rabbi is accusing Candace Owens of calling Rabbi Shmuley Boteach's daughter a hag. So that's the setup.
Right. A hag, which, okay.
How dare you go into the misogynistic, the anti-Semitic trope of his hag daughter, something used throughout the late 18th and early through the early 20th century.
Sorry. Hag is now anti-Semitic?
That is a term of his hag daughter that goes back into the witches of Eastern Europe. Why did you have to call her a hag daughter?
Just to be clear, because she's a witch. I think she's a witch. That's not because she's Jewish. I would call someone a hag of any color. I think she's a witch. What they have done over the last 2 years, I believe his daughter is a hag. I said that because that's what I believe. You may disagree with me on that, but to say that that's anti-Semitic is ridiculous. I would call any person a hag.
Candace?
Well, here's my thing. And I watched this entire thing. It was really, really difficult because, mind you, I don't think Candace Owens hates Jewish people, but to like, for instance, if I called Adam just off the cuff, I'm like, you freaking, you old ass hag. For somebody to have to for somebody to have to go all the way back to whatever century that he's talking about and be like, what you're saying is anti-Semitic. It's like, I felt, this is me personally, Dave, like he was searching for something because I don't know if you guys know Rabbi Shmuley. I don't know how it is in the Jewish community. The guy's a rabbi, which is technically, holy. She's like, he sells butt plugs and dildos in a business with his daughter. Candace thinks it's not good. In my opinion as well, I don't think anybody in the religious sect should be in business with their daughter of all people selling sex toys. That's the angle she took to say that it's anti-Semitic and that she doesn't like Jewish people. I think it's just reaching and looking for something to just label her, which I think is dangerous because like she's not. If you saw, did you see this thing, Adam? Did you see the interview with
I did.
the rabbi?
And I'll respond when you want.
I'm saying, do you think Candace Owens saying that Rabbi Shmuley, who he and his daughter have been attacking Candace for over 2 years, that her calling the daughter a hag, in her mind, she's like, yeah, this is anti-Semitic. Let me go for that.
Yeah, so I completely agree with this guy over here, the guy who just finished talking, not the rabbi, obviously. It is pretty insane to connect the word hag to anti-Semitism, but essentially that's what these people do all the time. They will find any word somehow connected to some form of racism, anti-Semitism, and then accuse you of that. I mean, let's think about it. This person's daughter has been attacking her for literally 2 years over this Hitler comment, which was not even anti-Semitic in the first place, and she responded by calling her a hag. But apparently, the only reason she could have ever come up with that situation or come up with that word was because she was being anti-Semitic, clearly. Except it's not so clear because this guy's entire thing was finding every single thing that she said and then implying that it might be anti-Semitic. And then from there trying to cancel her based on that. And it's interesting because throughout the entire conversation, he's like, yeah, we're both conservatives. And yet not only did this guy use pretty much every liberal talking point, he literally was emotionally unstable. He screamed at a certain point, and he looked like he was about to break down crying several times. So it's interesting that if this is the state of conservatism means literally nothing. But Candace had been ruffling too many feathers, especially within the Jewish community, getting into beef with not one but two rabbis and potentially more. And so this caused a lot of Jewish organizations to begin calling for her to be completely canceled and for the Daily Wire to fire her. So let's learn a little more about that.
His name is Isaac Shore. He writes for, you guessed it, Mediaite, as well as the New York Post, and he is now publicly calling to have me fired. He's written a lot of articles, by the way, and he talks to a lot of people behind the scenes, telling them not to run any pieces on Candace Owens. Don't talk about Candace Owens. This guy's like, doing a real hit job here. And like a total rational journalist, he tweeted, how long will the Daily Wire stand by Candace Owens? No one is asking the Daily Wire to stop Owens from peddling hatred and conspiracy theories. They're just wondering why it's choosing to subsidize such behavior. Yeah, totally a rational thing for a journalist to tweet. He accompanied that with an article by the same title, How Long Will the Daily Wire Stand by Candace Owens? Because as you've seen, I've showed you the whole history. Aren't you convinced yet? They've written so many articles. These psychological terrorists, they've told you 1,000 times anti-Semite, so it must be true. And why would anyone hire and stand by a raging anti-Semite? They've said it so many times, guys. And he wasn't done. He wrote a second headline yesterday published on Mediaite. Maybe, I don't know, just enraged at the fact that I had to sit down and spoke rationally to Rabbi Barclay. I don't know what's driving this, but here's the headline. Candace Owens endorses wild anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about Jews being drunk on Christian blood. That is the headline, you guys. You've been listening to the show. Have you ever heard me endorse a conspiracy theory about Jews being drunk on Christian blood? How sick and how sinister is this getting? How utterly insane this is all getting. It's starting to feel like there's some sort of a bounty on my head, and the person that can convince the public of something that is so ridiculous that I can't come back from is just going to receive a ton of money. And Isaac Shore is really competing for that, because do you want to know where he got that conspiracy theory from? A tweet that I had liked of someone defending me when Rabbi Shmuley was smearing me. He dug up an old tweet of mine that was from February, tried to present it as if it was something new and something that was about him before our back and forth ever even broke out. And so I liked the tweet because it clarified the right date of the tweet, saying that Rabbi Shmuley, this tweet is obviously from February 20th. What are you, drunk on Christian blood? Didn't even pay attention to the last part of the tweet. I just obviously liked that this person was calling out this BS smearing tactic. Little did I know that Isaac Shore and a team of journalists are now monitoring every single like of mine on Twitter to see if they can convince the public that I am advocating for insanity. This is how desperate they have become. So I'll ask the question, what are we actually witnessing here? Do you believe Isaac Shore is a victim? Did you believe that he is a person who genuinely in his heart thinks that I think Jews are running around drinking Christian blood by that headline? Do you think that Rabbi Barclay is a victim? Do you honestly believe his interpretation that I was the one who owed the apology to him and the Jewish community on the basis that I just won't let them keep trying to smear me out of existence? Specific people in the Jewish community. God forbid, did she defend herself against Rabbi Shmuley? Do you believe Rabbi Shmuley is a victim? When you listen to these individuals speak and the things that they are publicizing, does that register to you as true victimhood? Because what it registers to me as is power. Real power hiding behind a veneer of victimhood, the kind of power that can take somebody out and end their entire career if that person says something that they don't like. And in this case, it's not that I'm saying things that they don't like, it's that I'm refusing to allow my voice to be controlled.
Power disguised as victimhood. Well, doesn't that basically perfectly summarize the current state of progressivism, wokeism, liberalism, whatever you want to call it, the left, so to say? That's what it is, right? It's that using your status as a so-called victim to basically just bully other people and then hiding behind your so-called victim status, because after all, if you're a victim, you can't be an oppressor. And so she's figured out something that a lot of people don't want to hear. Now, of course, it's not necessarily news to see that a lot of other people do this. Black people, women, LGBT, whatever. All these people do it. But once you mention that Jews do this too, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's why they couldn't handle her being on there anymore. One final thing that really upset these people was her reaction to this clip.
My fellow Americans, are you okay with that? Are you okay with a lobbying group representing the best interests of a foreign government telling you you need to bust your ass every day, work a job that you likely hate, and have a portion of your earnings taken from you by our federal government and funneled to the Israeli government so they can commit atrocities in the Gaza Strip? Are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that. And nothing gets under my skin more, okay, than hearing these pieces of crap say things that make it clear that they feel entitled to our money. Entitled. That gets under my skin more than you guys understand, okay?
That's an impassioned response, and what she's referring to there are some leaked documents from an AIPAC meeting. AIPAC, of course, alongside Big Pharma, is one of the biggest lobbying organizations in the United States. They lobby our congressmen, and I'm certain that that includes journalists, because if you have a budget like AIPAC, why wouldn't you be lobbying journalists as well to essentially always fight to have pro-Israel narratives? And again, I want to be clear, I am not anti-Israel. This is what is so wild about all of this. I'm just not anti-Palestinian. And so I hear what she is saying, and I believe that what is happening right now in this country politically is an evil.
So in that first clip, that was Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks. Now, usually it's a pretty kind of trash organization. Wouldn't say they tend to have very good takes, but it is interesting that after having said this, she got fired because she came too close to figuring out the truth about how things really work. Because after all, she was talking about these people saying they're entitled to your money. Well, that is what they think. They do believe that they are entitled to our money. And you know, people will be like, oh, it's some trope, blah, blah, blah. Why does this trope always end up coming? And I mean, their very actions prove the so-called trope that they are trying to disguise. And so, yes, it is completely normal for her to be outraged about this. And as Candace herself said, too, the crime here is not even not being pro-Israel, it's just not being anti-Palestine enough. And that is a very typical kind of progressive, woke, whatever, liberal, whatever you want to call it. It's a very typical way that these people think, where they're like, it is not enough to not be on the other side. You have to be aggressively on our side, or else you are on their side. Now, of course, all of these things were building up. The Hitler comments from who knows when, the no genocide is acceptable, the calling out of Ben Shapiro's deceitfulness and emotional manipulation, the criticism of having to give our money to a foreign country. But really, the final straw is when she came a little too close to the truth.
I want to be clear to you guys. I'm going to be honest with you because everybody's noticing it. Every single political commentator in America, every single one of them knows this, that if you do not step out and say things that are radically pro-Israel, or if you are too quiet on certain narratives and they want you to be radically pro-Israel, you can lose everything. That's truth. That is a fact. I'm not feeling like I need to hide from that anymore or be afraid to say it, rather, is a better way to say it, because I've endured this for years. I'm just at the end of my rope. I have given so much rope here, and I am just done with it. Every person that you are a fan of, they know this. Every person that you line up to go here speak, they know this. Again, it's not even on the basis of what you say. It can sometimes be on the basis of what you don't say. That an entire mob will assemble, you'll write piece after piece after piece until you subjugate. If you don't subjugate, the bounty grows larger. So yes, there was a large bounty on my head for the crime of refusing to suddenly hate Muslims and to condone Muslims getting bombed following October 7th. Everybody can see that.
And by the way, lest you think that this is an exaggeration and I'm just too pro-Candace, whatever, keep in mind that there is no one who's safe from this. You can be the most pro-Jewish person ever, and you can still be anti-Semitic, because there's no way of winning with these people. So for example, Donald Trump, the man who literally moved the US Embassy to Jerusalem, is somehow still anti-Semitic.
Now, Donald Trump is even expressing concern about what's happened over there in Gaza and continues to happen, urging Israel to finish up their Gaza offensive, warning that global support for Israel is fading. And so, of course, Donald Trump is being called an anti-Semite. I mean, at this point, the Daily Wire will call you an anti-Semite if you disagree with Ben Shapiro about the best flavor of ice cream. This from ABC News. Trump appears to blame Israel for anti-Semitism, says Israel made a very big mistake and is losing a lot of support. You see, as Candace Owens illustrated, you're not allowed to be sad about the innocent casualties over there in Gaza. Otherwise, well, you know what happens.
Often when there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it.
Well, I mean, the proof is literally there. They're literally admitting that this whole anti-Semitism business is just a trick to silence people. And again, for anyone who knows a little bit about how, wokeism, progressivism, liberalism, again, whatever you want to call it, how that works, it's literally this, right? It is just calling everyone who disagrees with you a certain label, not because you even genuinely think they are that, but just so that you can silence them, shame them, and make them lose support. And so this leads us to the last part of Candace's very last episode. Now, I do not know if Candace knew she was going to get fired. I mean, I think she realized it was going to happen soon. I don't know if she necessarily realized that it was going to happen that very day, but most of these clips I've been showing you recently have been from her last episode. And so I do think it's kind of logical that eventually she probably realized that this would be her last episode, because she said, it's the end of my rope. I just want to spill everything here. And so I don't think that she really realistically could have made a follow-up after having just kind of dumped all the truth and all the facts to the audience in general. And so even when I watched this episode, I actually recognized that, which is why I downloaded the episode, because I knew for sure that this would be her last episode. So let's hear what she has to say.
I am Team God. Okay? I'm Team God. I do not fear the media. I do not fear journalists. I do not fear AIPAC. I don't fear Big Pharma. What I actually fear is God. I think that one day we are all going to have to account for the things that we have done and the things that we have said. And I want to make sure that I am not a person that is parroting lies. The fear of losing your job, encouraging some people to spit out lies, I don't think that works in the end, right? I think you got to check your priorities. And so with that said, I want to thank everybody who has been on this journey with me, people that have supported me. I especially want to thank all of the Jewish people that have been in the comments saying how outraged they are. And I know that it is especially difficult for you guys right now because you are being smeared, I mean, I'm not going to go away. I'm going to use my God-given voice to talk about the things that are important for me. I'm just asking to be left alone, or at least just report the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. But don't worry, because we will see you tomorrow for a brand new episode.
And so, as I predicted, that was the end. That was the last episode. And then she got fired. But the irony is that when that first flare-up happened with Ben Shapiro 4 months ago, the CEO, Jeremy Boring, had gone out of his way to say that he would not fire Candace because of reviews.
If you go back to November 2023, Jeremy Boring said, in my current capacity, I cannot fire Candace Owens. That's something Ben and I have in common, since he is also not an executive in the company, and I cannot hire or fire people. But even if we could, we would not fire Candace because of another thing we have in common. a desire not to regulate our speech of our hosts, even when we disagree with them, which again is curious given he said that he fired her.
Daily Wire and CANDACE Owens have ended their relationship. CEO Jeremy Boring posted on X Friday morning. Y'all, this fresh news. This just happened today. Owens, 34, reacted to the news saying, "The rumors are true. I am finally free." It comes after weeks of scandals surrounding the controversial conservative, who recently has launched a campaign claiming French First Lady Brigitte Macron is transgender. She has also been engaged in fiery online debates with several members of the Jewish community, who she claims are targeting her for being Christian. Well, ain't that something? You mean to tell me them folks got issues with Christians?
Well, that is correct. And really, the other stuff, Brigitte Macron being transgender, that's not really the problem. It's her getting into too many arguments with pro-Israel and pro-Jewish people. That really is the actual crime that she committed.
Owens also reacted on Friday morning after the Anti-Defamation League issued a statement deeming her an anti-Semite. She wrote on X, "I am grateful they have turned their smear merchant guns on me. The world already knows my heart. Their attacks will have the opposite desired effect. Awaken, world. Thank you, at ADL." She continued, "My crime is that I do not believe that American taxpayers should have to pay for Israel's wars or the wars of any other country. I will not change my mind, so the question is, what will you do to me next? The world is watching." Owens's comments came after the ADL posted about white supremacists and Nick Fuentes praising some of the conservative commentators' comments. When bigoted people come together to push an anti-Semitic agenda, it adds fuel to the fire of hate, the ADL said.
Now, keep in mind, there is only one part of this that really matters. And I think it could have easily slipped past you if you didn't pay attention. But the real reason that Candace Owens got fired is quite simple. Of course, yes, her criticizing Israel's wars and all that meant that she would have been fired eventually. But really what happened is that Nick Fuentes, who, as far as I seem to know, is like a racist alt-right guy, and he's a very goofy guy, he tweeted in support of her. And basically the ADL caught wind of this. And the ADL, basically, if you don't know, it's the so-called Anti-Defamation League, even though all they do is defame people. And it was a Jewish organization that was created to defend Leo Frank, who was a guy who raped and I think killed a girl in Mississippi. And this was back, around 1915, and then blamed it on the black guy. And it was so obvious that he was the one who did it that even the KKK was siding with the black person over him. So yeah, this is the kind of organization that we're dealing with here. But basically they said, you have anti-Semites coming together promoting hate, blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting because the day after that was sent that they fired her. Because everyone knows that these are the people who really have control, right? I'm sure the Daily Wire, again, would have probably fired her eventually. But this was the final impetus. They're like, we can't get on these guys' bad side. And so that's why they chose to do so. Now, interestingly enough, there was a Twitter Spaces discussion where Jeremy Boring was confronted on why he fired Candace Owens. So let's take a listen here.
Jeremy, what did Candace do that she deserved to be fired?
Well, I'm not going to have a conversation about Candace. When you run a business, you're not at liberty to have discussions about people that you fire. I know that everybody would like for me to be able to do that. I'm not able to do that.
Oh, so he did fire her. So it wasn't that the contract ended or that, she just wanted to go somewhere else. It was a firing. Interesting.
Jeremy, I'm just wondering, and I guess I'm asking this as a yes or no question, did Candace Owens violate any specific policies at the Daily Wire? And I'm not asking you to tell us which policies. I'm just asking, was she fired because she violated a company policy?
I'm not going to make any comment about the Daily Wire's separation from Candace Owens in this forum.
So that's no then. Just to be clear with everyone, that's no. She did not violate any
Well,
company policies.
Well, I don't.
that's a
I
very,
don't.
Wait,
I
very
don't.
sneaky,
We're not.
very sneaky way of
Let
ascribing to me
Sanders
an
ask a
answer
question,
that I did
Clive.
not give.
If she violated a company policy, you would have been able to say yes to the question, Jeremy. I know that much.
So this guy is being a total coward and a liar. You know, he's saying that he didn't fire her, even though he did fire her. They did not just separate. And, you know, you can see from this recent interaction that he was totally deflecting from the question that the lady was asking him, because he can't actually name any policies that she violated. And so it's sort of obvious that if he can't come up with a response, then clearly he fired her for being anti-Israel. Now, of course, it didn't take very long for the pro-Israel people and the very same Jewish rabbis who'd been trying to get Candace Owens fired to throw a celebration. So this is the famous Rabbi Shmuley who made a video reacting to the event.
Hi, everybody. Purim is a day of celebration. We feel bad for Candace Owens that she lost her job. So I figure, with her image of what Jews are supposed to look like, why not at least validate her? I am dressed up as a Candace Owens Jew. Now, this is not a Christian child, it's a Jewish child. But if it would be, I got my Christian blood.
What a disgusting
spicy,
guy.
delicious. I got my Jewish nose. I have filth, because Jews are all filth. And more than anything else, what does 80 have? Money! Yeah, we Jews are all about money!
All about the Benjamins.
Hey, wait. All about the Benjamins. Wait, I'm getting a little bit thirsty. Where's the matzah? I don't want to finish the whole thing and not mix it into the matzah. So can someone just bring me? She did say, one second, she did say that I was getting,
What a weird
liked that
this,
tweet.
by the way. It's kind of disturbing. You go on the bottom on the clip, there's videos of him grinding a 12-year-old boy sitting on top of
Grinding boys. Like, by the way, those kids, what do you think those kids are saying and thinking? And it's
Well, again, not really very surprising behavior. This guy is clearly a freak. He is a weirdo. I mean, I guess I can kind of understand the humor. It's not super funny, but at least I can understand it. But again, this guy is grinding on kids too and doing all this other stuff. He just seems like a very scummy, perverted person. And so, again, to even be making a video celebrating someone getting fired is insane.
Perfect. Would
I fired Candace Owens?
No.
Are you trying to ask me why I fired Candace Owens?
And so he does, of course, admit that he did fire her. You know, and there's also, you know, an interesting thing.
I had a
Where is this? There's another quote about here. Daily Wire CEO admitted that he would never hire somebody that crossed his threshold of acceptable criticism of Israel, and couldn't off the top of his head name even one conservative influencer critical of Israel that he doesn't consider anti-Semitic.
I can't name a single person who isn't an anti-Semite who does believe that. Isn't the same as saying that I couldn't. Very arguably there is someone out there. I don't know. I'm not like tracking the views of every single person out there.
So he's saying that there's not a single person in conservative media who would express those views, but wouldn't be an anti-Semite. But that doesn't mean that there isn't somebody out there who exists who expresses those views who's not an anti-Semite. There might be one person on planet Earth.
I can't call someone to name right now who I think walks the line.
Do you think I'm anti-Semitic?
Yes, because opposing the government of a country is somehow racist, and somehow being against all Jewish people to condemn a government. And really, Candace was not even necessarily like anti-Israel. She just was against their actions in Gaza. And keep in mind, I'm not really sure if what's going on in Gaza counts as genocide. Given that I'm not sure, I tend to lean towards that it's not a genocide. But nevertheless, there are some problems that they're having over there where they are being too brutal. And that in itself is just enough to be too much for these people. And so that is beyond acceptable speech. Now, if you remember from earlier in this video, that Jeremy Boring literally said that despite the differences between Candace and Ben, the Daily Wire supports free speech and so won't silence her. But I guess all his principles went out of the window the moment that she said what was unacceptable. I will say, it is interesting to note how little the Daily Wire people have said about Candace being fired. I mean, Jeremy Boring has gone on the Twitter space and has been confronted about it, but Ben Shapiro, at least till very recently, said nothing. The Michael Knowles said a little bit, but not too much. Matt Walsh didn't say anything. Jordan Peterson didn't say anything. Brett Cooper didn't say anything. But it is interesting that this dude, Andrew Klavan, said something. And Andrew Klavan is kind of like the one dude on the Daily Wire that no one's heard about and nobody cares about. But we'll see what he had to say about it.
This guy, whose name is Andrew Klavan, who is, I would say, like the redheaded stepchild of the Daily Wire, doesn't really have that many viewers. Nobody really cares what he says. This is probably the first time most people have even heard of him. But he did a rather lengthy video agreeing with the Daily Wire's decision to fire Candace Owens, saying that they did the right thing.
You know, that's a dog whistle. When you start to refer in this kind of clever way to certain group of people in Hollywood corrupting blacks, you're not allowed to then put on an innocent look and say, well, I'm just saying there's certain people, just a few, it's not, I'm just saying, you're messing with us. You're messing with us, and everyone knows it, and no one is fooled except those people who want to pretend to be fooled because they hate the Jews.
So let's get something straight here. Basically, he is angry at Candace for saying that there is a Jewish mafia in Hollywood that does a lot of corrupt things. But before you scream, oh, that's anti-Semitic, blah, blah, it's conspiracy theory, think about it this way. Let's say I'm like, there is an international group of Italians who commit crime in many different cities and who are organized, who have connections with each other, who do this kind of stuff. Does that make me anti-Italian? Does that make me racist? No, people say this literally all the time. We all know what it is. It's called a mafia. Nothing wrong with saying it. But if a Jewish person does it, then it's anti-Semitic and it's a conspiracy theory. And I do find it interesting how every time you have issues with them, it's always a conspiracy theory. I mean, there seems to be like no other form of racism. Like if you're racist against black people, it's not a conspiracy theory. If you're racist against, white people, East Asians, Indians, whatever, it doesn't really matter. None of these people is a conspiracy theory. It's only stuff involving them. And he says, oh, this crossed the line, this is anti-Semitic. Prove her wrong instead of just calling her names.